Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon.
Have you ever had one of those conversations where you just couldn't get enough of
Well, if we were to
was
put a headline on this conversation that I had with consultant Leslie Tracy, the headline would be,
was causing you to think.
why don't they listen?
Sometimes in a conversation you would express
It's totally unfair to
something
her,
about what you're thinking,
but
and get a
they are the
response.
people who are still at a place in their practice lives and careers where they could make a change, personally or collectively in an organization level
I
change.
just loved.
Will they listen to our generation, Leslie and mine?
In the best sense of
We would like them to, because as you'll hear in this conversation,
which you're about to hear,
there's a lot of wisdom
philosophy came through
that she's imparting, as well as some very fresh insights to the generational differences that are existing now in our companies and other organizations, and
then you'll have
particularly focusing on the Zs, the Gen Zs, and how they're coming into the workplace now and workforce
how to keep
with
people in
a
conversation,
different life experience overall and some very different expectations
about this
for how they want to be managed and led.
question of what
So
is a system.
why don't they listen to
His
us?
answer
Well,
is pretty
maybe,
straightforward.
as we said at the end of
It's
our conversation,
relationships with implications.
even a few people listening
Now you
to
take it from
what we
there
have
and you're
to
into
say
quite an
could make a
investigation, but
difference,
asking,
and
how
then
should
that person or
how
they
should I
can go
announce
out
you?
and make other differences, and
He
pretty
said,
soon
I'm just a
we've had some
storyteller.
impact.
And he
So
sure
this is what it's about.
So here
Two
is
people who've had
Gene
long
Bellinger.
careers, successful careers,
Well, folks,
but still want to be heard, still want to have
as I'm
impact.
doing without leaving this
This is
chair
Leslie Tracy.
over the last several years. I keep
Yeah,
meeting
so
really
started, big
fascinating
interest in
people
psychology.
who
Mm.
are,
And so I got an undergraduate
field of
and a
my
master's in
interest, which is
psychology, and
practice
I worked in a
particularly,
school
but
for
also
emotionally
widely
disturbed children.
organizational behavior and
And I
effectiveness.
was in the DC
And I
area,
found
and then I got
Gene
divorced,
Bellinger.
and I kind of realized
Did
I needed
pronounce
to
that
make
correctly,
money.
Gene?
Oh,
So I went,
Between my brain and my lips, I might have
I
messed
got
up
a
Gene's
job
name.
with,
And I asked Gene a moment
CSC.
ago, how should I introduce
and they kind of
you?
were
And
intrigued
because
with my
people can
psychology
find you on
background,
LinkedIn and they can look
because
at
it was the
kind
time
your
of office
profile. But
automation,
I
and
like the fact
all these
that you
changes
say
were
you're a
coming, and gee, maybe
storyteller
she understands people.
about
So I get involved in office automation, and I really kind of love it. And I'm
And
not
their
a real
implications.
technical person, but I always had this awe.
yeah, that's the
I
entire
don't know, I kind of
podcast
got
right
it. I like technology. So then I went back and got another master's at American University,
Gene,
and I did consulting.
You know,
Most of
I
it
know
with the
about
Defense
you now, and I
Department.
know that you made
And it was so interesting. Every time there was a new general
all things
or a new
systems, and
administration, we
particularly
did the
how
same
people
study
think
again, because they had to have their own studies.
life
It's
of
interesting.
systems, because we all live in them.
nothing
Yeah,
has
so
changed since the
no.
beginning of man.
The requirements analysis, and it would be this and that. So I got to know the Defense Department.
First met,
And then I thought, okay, I want to change. And that's when I went over to Marriott. So I spent several years at Marriott, and I started out in data security, and I moved into HR, because I really, my gift, I think, I have a real strong understanding of people.
having relationships with
particularly in organizations. So I ended up in HR,
recognizing that
and I like that, and that was good. And then I went to Accenture, Anderson, and I got involved in change management. So that's where I really landed change management, and there was a lot of IT there, a lot of change.
Yes.
But I really picked up was I was in so many different organizations, big major ones, a lot of the baby bells before the breakup.
That's thinking backwards.
And various places, and that's where I met Tom too, because I ended up at PwC. But I really saw a lot of miserable people.
A better way to communicate
and I got involved in outsourcing at HP.
Oh dear.
So it really was a pretty sad state of affairs. When I looked at how, to me, the health of corporate America, the waste, and the hurt.
first
I mean,
50 videos
people
were
really
worse
had a
than
lot
Bellinger
of
now. I mean,
issues
it was
and
terrible.
still do.
It was
So
you
you
sit down
culminate
and
and
you
take
figure
all
out
those
what you want to
factors
say,
from my
and you write the
history.
script for
And
a-
I'm
for a
retired.
5-minute video
So then
that takes 2
I
hours to
think,
write,
well, okay, I'm not going to
which is
stop.
absolutely ludicrous.
So it was 2019,
And
right before
it
COVID,
got to a
bad
point where the
timing.
videos
And
became
I did
easier
this
than actually
thing on
writing anything.
recruiting and
So I could
retention.
sit down
And I did all
work
this
through
research,
what
and I thought, oh my
understood about a
gosh,
set of
this is all about
relationships,
Gen Z and
and then
millennials. You know, it was all
unfold that
this
set of
That's right.
relationships and
that
describe
came
them
up. So that's
in
where I
the
got really
video.
interested. And what
and never write a script
captured
for
me
it.
the
And people would
most
say,
was
let's
how much
suppose
they
you
really
screw it
want
up.
to
And my
change
comment was,
corporate
how long
life
does it take to redo
or
a
life,
5-minute
work
video?
life.
About 5
And,
minutes.
you know, I've seen both sides of the
And
coin.
then
On one hand,
it's
just
not
read
unusual
Coddling and
to
the
get
American
the first
Mind. You know, on
3
one hand,
words out and
there's
say,
kind of this,
shit,
oh, these kids
and
are
delete it
impossible.
and start over again. I mean,
They,
it's that
you know,
easy.
they don't
Yeah.
know
The
anything.
whole
They
idea
need
was,
they need to be coddled, right? You know, right and left, and that had a
I
lot to do
used
with the
to labor
universities,
over the
colleges.
development of these
But then I see the other side where they're really diverse.
And
they really don't
it
have
was
a lot of the
back
baggage
before I
that we've
understood
had, I think.
where I am at the moment.
There's
I
hope.
think, you know,
Yeah,
I would
there's
be-
hope.
I would
So-
get so connected
so then I really
with what
drilled
it was
down
that
mainly
I had
on Gen
developed,
Z.
and I would think
But I
it
have
was
all the
really
generations
awesome.
because I'm
And
seeing
I
more and
wanted to share
more.
it with
Like
someone else,
I'm
'cause
hearing
I
some
wanted to
local.
impress
I'm in
them how
Marblehead,
smart I was.
Massachusetts.
And
On a
Okay.
I
local
really didn't
level,
give a shit.
there's a lot of we have
Retirees coming around there.
yeah, we got
And
retired. Well, we got
after
people
a day
that
or two,
turned into
if they said
retirees.
anything,
We're
we'd
getting
send
quite
back a
top
message
heavy.
and say, "Oh, that's
But you look
nice."
at these volunteer
And what he
situations,
really wanted to
and
say
I'm
is, "Why the
starting
hell
to
did you send
see,
this
oh
to
my
me?"
gosh, here we
Because
go.
it
We
did
got
not
the
give
baby
them a
boomer,
headache. There wasn't a way for them
autocratic. This is the way
to
you do it.
understand
And you've got
what
the
I thought I
millennial
understood.
who's like super talented,
So-
ready to, you know, just knock them
So
dead and getting madder
along the
and
way,
madder at the
over
way
the
this
last
person's treating
48 years,
everybody.
I've made these
Mhm.
amazing,
So it plays
I've had these
itself out
amazing
over and over
aha
again.
moments that were sort
And
of
that's where my
leaps in
interest lies.
understanding.
So
And
I
don't
write
know
articles
where
and
they
I
come
keep
from.
doing research.
I
and
tend to lose
I
track
do some
of
speaking
what
locally.
actually instigates
And
them.
usually people
at
walk
one
away
point
with
in
a big
time,
aha.
I
Because
made this
if you look
connection
at
between a
the
model, this
influences
relationship diagram,
when Gen
and a play.
Zers were born versus when
Ah.
boomers
Go
were
to the play
born, how
and
we
you
were
sit there
raised, what our
and you
expectations were.
listen to and
And I'm
watch
pretty
the
much talking
relationships
white collar
unfold
here
between the
because,
actors from
you know,
one act to another.
from a business
If the
perspective,
play was
there
done
really is a big
relatively
difference.
well,
Yes.
And
you
people
leave,
don't
you take the
understand
story
that.
with you.
And I also
Because
feel very
as
strongly, nobody's
Gregory
right or
Bateson
wrong.
said,
This is
it's
just
the
what we
pattern
are.
that connects.
Mhm.
So, because some people really start doing these,
What systems
they're
people
awful,
have done
you know, they're
forever
hopeless kind
in
of
multiple
viewpoints.
forms is equivalent
And to me,
you
we're all
haven't
great
seen
and
the
wonderful,
play.
but we really have big differences.
Though the
And
playwright
the more
walks
people
up to you,
understand them,
hands you the
the
script,
better we can do.
and 10 minutes later,
So
says,
you have
what do you think?
put your views
There is
to
no way that
where
you can
we who teach
comprehend that piece of work
have
in
to
that
put our
form
views right there with
in
people
that time
sitting,
frame. It's
hopefully not in
ludicrous.
rows
You just
anymore,
can't
but
do
sitting
that
in a room.
now. But we
Mhm.
have done that to
Now on
people
Zoom,
forever.
but you know, and
And I realized
where you've had
that I
people
needed a
walk
way
out
to
feeling
get out of that
they
mode.
have evolved their own
And
thinking. There's some spark of something new there.
sometimes
So that
they write
is
these
ultimately,
papers,
Leslie,
these
I think the
lengthy-
test of how our ideas
just
come
go
through.
on and
Because
on
by the
and
time
on
we
with
write
something
them
they could have said
and
in
edit,
2
they're
paragraphs.
edited, and sometimes they don't
And
go out for
you
months.
look at the
And-
diagram
and
when you read the paragraph.
you
look
don't
at the
ever get
diagram,
that
you read the
feedback.
paragraph, and by the time you get to the
And,
end of the paper,
and so
you got
I think
whiplash going back and forth.
seeing the spark happen,
So I finally realized
I'm
that
guessing,
the best way to
you know, you have maybe
provide
a bit of a script there,
someone
but you
else
can
with an understanding of
come
where I
off it
was at the
and
moment, whether it's a
respond
qualitative or a
and
quantitative
create
simulation
something
model,
new in the
is to
room.
unfold it like a story.
My
piece by
hunch
piece
is
by
that that's
piece,
one of
and do a video
many reasons that you will go
voiceover
back
of
to the data and to the what people are writing and all the rest, because you have
and
seen it
if I do
firsthand.
it
Am I
well,
right?
By the time I get to the
Yeah,
end of
exactly.
the story,
And
know
I feel
where I
like
am,
what they are
because the pattern
bringing,
connects.
they
And then I can
being
ask
the
them
Gen
the only
Zers
question
and
that
millennials
actually
to
makes
some
any
extent,
sense is,
they might bring a really healthy
what can you
perspective
add
on
to the
work and a
story
workforce
that
that
involves our
is
collective
valued. And,
understanding of
you know, the
this
things that
set
they
of
ask for is
relationships?
what all human beings always want anyway.
And, you know,
See me,
sometimes they
appreciate
tell
me.
me that I should go back and
it
start
doesn't
over
mean
again, which
giving
is
away
fine.
the store.
The
You have to
key
have your
understanding
limits, and it's a
is when I
business.
ask
And I
them
remember
for
I used to
feedback,
say
I have
that,
to be smart enough to
as an
argue
HR
that.
person, you want to make sure you keep
Because
people
it's their
comfortable and
perspective
you can give
and
them
their
what you want, and
perspective
you
is
have
valid.
limits. You're not going
I
to
came
give away
to
everything.
realize that people
And they have to know it's a business. But and I
do
really,
exactly what makes the
interesting
most
that you're
amount of sense to them
a management
in the
professor,
context
because
of the
that's
moment
where I
based on
really
their understanding.
focus.
Yes.
I think the
Which
middle
means,
managers are there are very few good ones.
And they're the ones I've known, by and large,
seek first to understand
are pretty miserable because they are
if you
twixt
don't
in
agree
tween.
with the feedback that they're giving you,
Middle
what you
manage
should do
up,
is
manage
seek to
down. You know
understand
the words we've used
why
over the
that
years.
perspective is valid
Managing up used to be,
them.
well, I'm really going to get to know
And
Mr.
figure
Big
out
or Ms.
how
Big.
to
Well,
weave
these
the
days,
multiple
Mr. or Ms.
perspectives
Big
together. One of the
left and someone's replaced
stories
them.
that I unfolded as soon
Sometimes
as
6 months
I
in.
started
So that
on this path
part of the
was
relationship
Aesop's
building
fable,
is
the Golden
constantly
Cycle.
interrupted.
it's
As you said,
a
generals
relatively
like to
simple
have their
story
own
that unfolds with four
whatever
links and
stamp on
7 or
things,
8
and so
elements.
does Miss or Mr. Big, and so that
I
changes.
unfolded it, and
Now
I
we've
was
got the
delighted
generations
with it.
that
And I
they're
sent
supposed
it
to
to somebody, and I
represent
said,
in
"What do
that
you think of
conversation
this?"
between the levels,
And a
and
couple
that
days later,
generation
he
is by
sent
and
me back
large
the story
changing
from the wolf's
much
perspective.
faster than ever before.
And I said, okay. There's the boy's perspective.
Live
the
now in the
townspeople,
land of
the
steady
wolf, the
habits,
sheep, the
Connecticut,
farmer,
but
the
they grew up
lamb.
in Maine. But
And
in
they're
both
all valid
instances,
perspectives
permanency was a
all
given.
of those various perspectives.
If I'm starting to work at Travelers Company at
you have
22, I'll be there when I get the
view of the situation,
big gold watch,
but not all of it.
Right.
And I used to tell my students who all worked here in this working class part of Connecticut, and who I wanted to work at Travelers,
every time.
don't expect the watch. If you need a watch, get one now. And then get in there and make sure that every aperture of your learning mind is open all the time, as well as speak.
And everybody
because
else is on
people
outside.
don't know what you think until you tell them. And then if you get to stay there 5 years,
20 years in this arena,
that's your equivalent of a master's degree. And if you get, and if you're really learning and you get there for 15 years, you've learned a great deal and that you can take somewhere, but recognize that at some point or another, particularly as you become a middle manager,
literally thousands of models
we're going in a new direction. The economy of 2008-9, which Tom Casey and I talked about, is like you just threw those people out in droves. So
for managers.
You're tuned into something that's very real. And I think what Peter Vaill, who was my partner in this work, said was change itself is changing.
And finally, I understand.
And that's what you've seen in your career. Now, did I hear you correctly? You said you're retired, yet I hear you working all the time. Thinking, speaking, writing. Wait a minute, what did I miss?
Actually, you're right. I'm retired from the regular job.
Yeah, I got it.
And I do some resumes too on the side. And then that's another piece that's interesting. Because now 1.5. This is the pattern I see, and a lot of them are IT. But the pattern is they have. You can see where someone's done maybe a good 10, 15, maybe 20 years, not really strong employment, whether it's 10 years and 10 years, or maybe 10 years and 5.
I think you are pretty smart.
And then after that, it's 2 years, 1 year, 2 years.
Complexity of
almost like
in that issue.
And I feel like my career was a little bit like that. There's a peak area,
haven't heard
a peak time,
context,
and then afterwards, it doesn't all fit as well. For some reason, you're overqualified, maybe overqualified, but it doesn't fit quite as well. And you start moving, and then with today's environment, there's no disadvantage to moving around. So it's like, okay, this is the way the new reality is. So then you see all these small. But I find that fascinating. The other thing is I wrote an article on middle managers and change. Wow. And this always fascinated me, because what you were describing, you've got to go above and you go, you go down. And then when change comes, that middle manager is stuck. This is what you have to do. Whether they want to do it or not, they got to keep the lights on. I got to keep everybody moving in the right direction. And then on top of that, they have to institute this change. And they're never even brought in on the thinking, the planning. They're just told they have to do it. So that's a whole nother piece. And then you're saying the change that's even happening, you can't even recognize it. It's so fast and new. So that's another. But yeah, so that middle manager level has the biggest impact on people. That's why people leave. Their immediate manager, they don't like for whatever reason.
Yeah, the Gallup studies reinforced that over the years.
Yeah, and then I've collected some stories on how middle managers have really done the wrong thing. That to me is the linchpin.
What can we do about it then?
Well, I started thinking about it. Okay, so there's a lot on EQ and there's a lot on emotional intelligence. And I remember seeing really strong managers. Sometimes they were women. Who love their people. Now there's a plus and a minus to that, because on one hand, they were so devoted to their people, and their people were devoted to them. But then they never wanted to let the people go. They didn't want them to go to another department to get developed. Yeah. So it kind of had a negative. But I kind of feel what I've seen is a lot of people get promoted into management because they're good at something. But it's usually not people.
Explain it to someone else.
They're great
particularly the technical side, as you mentioned. Yeah,
they're a great salesperson, or they're a great this or a great that, but they're not really a great people person. So I sometimes think, why don't we just hire those people with EQ? Get those people in the right positions for today's world. And I think they will have a better chance at creating the environment that's conducive for these young generations.
That makes a lot of sense.
Relationships.
It'll be it'll be a while before the grip is loosened on the resume of an up-and-coming person who has gotten things done, in quotes,
the idea of
about looking carefully at the fact that they were, a lot of them were solo performers, or they had a lot of acumen around the tools of the day,
original inspiration,
and
as you can,
if they had a personality that was a plus,
third-person language,
and exaggerating the point, to agree with your point,
it has some universal.
The rethinking how we make the connections among there will always be layers and hierarchy. It's not going to go away, particularly with global companies.
We've got a bunch of models that we've retaught over
the years. So if there's going to be hierarchy,
the question always comes back to who is this person?
Let's take a close look.
What got them started on this particular modeling episode?
The boxes and the lines are actually human beings.
What model to
and they're not Lego pieces.
It's nothing.
Plug in and pull out that kind of mindset, that mechanistic mindset
out of it.
Just bug the heck out of people like Tom, Casey, and me, and you and a bunch of people I've worked with, because they don't like the dehumanizing. Actually, the irony of dehumanizing someone who's promoted into that's important.
And I think that's
basically, that's all well and good, but let's put someone in there who has a record of getting things done. Now the difference is getting things done through others, which is one of the most basic definitions of managing.
That's right.
I think is unshakable. Getting things done through others.
Yes.
That is the challenge. And that's to the point you just made. Now we got a generation coming up
he talked about
who
he was walking
come up with a lot of sensibilities and sensitivities,
about what he wanted to be remembered
and they are
for.
going to be the others through whom these managers must get things done.
Why do I want to be remembered at all?
Wow.
The other thing is that Gen Z and millennials really they have side hustles. Their ultimate goal is to be their own boss.
Independent. I've seen that.
That's going to be interesting in about 10 years. Because how many can make that happen? And if they do, are they the ones that really do change the culture
of a
lot of successful businesses?
I know.
By creating them, or
early 90s, I think it was.
Why don't these big corporations like a Marriott, why don't they just essentially create jobs opportunities with the span, so that people have a side hustle within the company. So Joe, you got enough energy to do this particular function area. Okay, but we're going to let you pick any other place in the company where you'd like to spend roughly the amount of time you would have spent trying to gin up your own business, so that you become more versatile in the company, as opposed to using the company to become more versatile out of the company. Now, the other factor, though, in that, is that you have to not be that possessive manager you mentioned a moment ago, who's saying, no, Joe's mine. Joe, you can't have 8 hours a week of Joe over there.
And accounting.
And so there could be that. But if it becomes a company's perspective on human development, human resource development, that people should find plenty of room within the company for the kind of mobility. Now, they still are dependent on that paycheck from the company, but maybe the company's making enough money so they can afford to pay them well, and they don't need to,
I don't care where they are.
Look at a side hustle as the stream of income they need to live any kind of a balanced life.
He's into
What do you think about that?
On a really important point, is Gen Z in particular, they are interested in financial stability. So those young people, if you give me the right place, I'll stay, and I want the stability. I don't want to, millennials have the bad rap of, let's see what's next, let's keep moving. That financial stability, but just give me the opportunity to learn different things, help develop me. So what you just described is a fabulous solution. The company could loosen its grip a little. You could have a whole side hustle in terms of maybe a new product. You could have a whole side hustle in a new business unit. There are a lot of things that they could really love. But it takes amazing leadership to do this. And that,
but basically,
I think we don't have enough good leaders, period.
To the point of self-organization, not to throw us off into another track.
As a country, I don't know if you read about
where you let people face their own situations and
the extrovert versus the introvert. There's been some books out on introversion. They're the thoughtful ones. They're the this one. They're that. And how we don't recognize that. We like the loudmouth.
To people who have
we do.
A whole other piece too.
Courage
to bring different people to big leaders. Having big leaders being different kinds of personalities. And that's another, I'm getting off on a side tangent there.
No, you're not, because this is, you asked me before we started this recorded conversation, which I'm delighted to have finally folks
producing a product or service
Leslie, Tracy, Tom, Casey, I'd
like to see that kind of
say, you got to meet Leslie. Now, 20 minutes into our conversation, I know why, because you have about a wonderfully modeling, really pointed, but from broad curiosity. It's pointed at people in organizations, and it started in our conversation by saying you saw an awful lot of unhappy, miserable people earlier in your day, and then father's perspective, you're interested in human.
It's the wolf,
the human condition, if you will, and why do we have inhuman organizations? So that's a big cause, and it certainly hasn't gone away. But I think you're giving us some hope that you can think creatively. Now let's look at the point, though, of senior leadership, which is where Tom, in particular, in his conversations, has been focusing the whole notion of who's leaving, who's staying, and the challenges of getting through the pandemic certainly created a bit of a weed out of people who were in their 50s, 60s,
once upon a time,
making decent money and essentially running companies. Who said no? Now I've seen the light. I've been working from home too, even though I'm in the corner office, but I'm at work at home, and I realize, hey, I've got grandkids. The dog loves me now, and so their inner way of speaking to themselves was giving them a real talking to and saying, you really want to go back in that buzzsaw and get everyone back in the same roof, commuting these impossible commutes to come together and then bring them into a conference room.
But to try and change the label at this
have
point,
meetings,
since there are hundreds of thousands of connections to it, would be
Zoom. You probably started to. It freed up a lot of people and actually made them look a lot more real as human beings. Well, you barely ever saw the big guy. If you're on the elevator with him, there's the elevator speech, right? But otherwise, he's on his way up to the top floor, and you're going out.
Is that you basically
to grab a sandwich,
develop trees of
relationships. You got me going here.
So you have
this is supposed to be getting to know you, and I'm giving you all my
figure out how they're connected.
That whole remote work thing is a whole nother.
So that to develop a wiki,
there's no one answer.
Would be
and so this is what I learned.
Particularly as
Gen Z
as your
really wants to be mentored.
Right. So Wikipedia,
they really want to get in the office. And in fact, I have a granddaughter. She lasted 6 months. Remote, didn't know anybody, died inside 1,000 times, and just quit.
You can put things in there,
and that's being repeated all over the place. So then there's a whole piece of what's expected of top leadership and middle managers with a remote workforce, and that's a lot of micromanagement. That's a lot of care. That's a lot of involvement, particularly if you have like a young professional. And if you don't do that, they do. Stories are abound. They leave without even meeting anybody, and nobody cares about them. It's a real amazing. So that's the worst case scenario.
No, it's true though.
It's happening. I have another story. Somebody right out of school, bright, wonderful person. And she went to some healthcare organization. I think it was in Atlanta somewhere. And the first 2 weeks, they put her in a room and said, "Here, we've got a lot of training for you." And it was all computer-based training. And after a week, she was so depressed. And she again was dying inside. And then she left. And I thought, whose idea was that? You've got a young person in an office.
It's hard to stay.
And I've seen that too. How many times, like, oh yeah, you're starting today. Nobody's ready for the person. Have you ever seen that whole? No one. Oh yeah, we didn't know you were coming in today, and there's no inspiration. I mean, that has all got to stop. I mean, people want to feel important, to the point, welcome. So then you've got that remote world piece there. Then you've got millennials that are starting to have families and like, oh, this isn't bad at all. I like being home. And then you've got Gen X. Okay, I like going to my summer house. And I never get to go to my summer house in the month of February or whatever. And then you've got boomers, and then you've got that conflict. Wait a minute. I got to see everybody. So I hear stories where they're insisting people go back, and I think the federal government just did. Somebody said to me, my son sits there on Zoom calls in the office. So it's a mess.
If they get it in the first few sentences,
and you've watched the development of office technology and so forth over the
undergraduate
decades,
and everything.
The dream back in the 80s was that we would have this opportunity to be remote and be there, and that was quite a compelling image.
And you pull it out.
We were forced into it by the shutdown,
and you look at it and you go,
"Oh my God!" Certainly shook some things up in colleges where.
And my home sociology major, so you can imagine how dense that stuff was.
Now we're in a
graduate, and you come through and try to find something in there that you
Hartford, Connecticut, down the road from me.
Now he's talking about human behavior,
close to full office occupancy in 2019.
That was it.
In fact, they were adding offices.
Come a long way.
Renovating
you in particular.
Now it's last thing I read was something like 40% return. So now you've got
these 5 minutes.
Extraordinary expensive pieces of real estate.
In a lifetime,
60% unoccupied.
So that people at least will spend enough time with it.
I would say. So that's where I start the side hustle thing. I'd say to everyone who's there, the 40%. And by the way, while you're here, I'm going to give you a second place to go in this building. It's going to be an incubator, an idea incubator. It's going to be a place where you can shake off the dust
10 or 12
of your day if you're running accounts all day long, and you can go upstairs and you can really play.
I can't remember the last time I actually finished.
Play with your mind. Don't just go up there to work on a treadmill.
Survival mechanism.
So we get all this on our.
Okay,
what are they actually doing? They're trying to get rid of the
interesting
space.
Or relevant.
It's sad
Tell
because
me in a
it's an
couple of sentences
opportunity.
Why you think it's relevant?
Now, the other
Then I'll go
good
to
part,
YouTube
though, and
and
maybe
search
you've
for the
been
book
seeing
of the
this,
author
is
and see if they've
they're also
done
saying,
an interview or something.
to your earliest
And
point,
if they have, I'll pick
wait
the
a minute.
shortest
What
video
if
I
we're
can find.
we're asking people to
And
come
listen
back
to
a rough
3 or 4
commute,
minutes to find out
pay
if I
$70
actually want some more.
a week parking and all the
I'll
rest?
search the internet for
What kind of work experience are we
someone who
giving
reviewed the
that
book
is so damn attractive?
or did an article.
So they started looking around and saying, well, maybe we better spruce up the place.
Now
Maybe
I
we
often
better
go to ChatGPT and ask it about
provide
the topic.
some other work. We work kind of conveniences that we work has discovered, and maybe we got to stop being XYZ corporation, same old, same old.
And I've
and that's
I've
happening in some places, right? They're
I
making
hope
it.
so.
Yeah.
For
The
the
other
sake of
thing
Gen
is-
Z and for their having enough people to run a company, I sure hope so.
Wow.
The other thing I've read is satellite offices.
It's
So you've got the
thing is,
big,
if you search
you
the
know,
web, it gives you a bunch of
main
references,
office in
and
the
then you have
city,
to
but
go around
when
and
like
click to
I'm in the
figure
Boston
out-
area,
to figure
you
out
can have satellite
what
offices
aspects of them are
that at least get people
relevant to
together. I
what's
also
on
talked to
your
somebody
mind.
who
If you go
said
to ChatGPT,
they're very remote,
you tell it what's
but
on your
her
mind
company, it's an
and
IT
ask it a
company,
question.
paying
you
a
can
lot of
ask
money
further
to get a
refining
global team
questions, and
together every
Every
quarter.
morning I spend
So that maybe, or
15
3
or 20
times a year.
minutes
Face to face,
having
yeah.
conversations
Face to
with
face, which
ChatGPT
is
almost every
needed.
single day.
You know, that
Absolutely.
is where you build those
I'm
relationships and
happy to hear
trust.
someone
And,
likes it.
oh,
I
yeah,
keep
I
hearing
remember
the
when we
scary
did this,
stuff,
blah, blah,
on the
blah.
media. Oh,
So
it's going to take
that
over
to
the
me,
world.
I thought was a
Hear
pretty
professors
interesting
saying how
solution. And they pull out all the
so-and-so's
stops.
term
I mean, they make it a
paper,
really
not something. You mean all
you know,
of that, but
high-end
that doesn't,
experience and lots of networking.
It sounds very familiar to
So
me after all
that's
the years.
there are a lot of
the
solutions.
internet's going to take over.
It seems
this
that,
and
as I'm watching my clock,
the
and
phone
we're going to do
without
this
cord
again
on
because
it
I'm
is gonna
learning
put-
so much with
so
you. And
this is,
but it seems to me though
departure
that
from what we used to. But it sounds to me from what you said,
that
it's
that
very
they've
useful
uncovered
for someone
the
who's an
hidden
investigator.
question of
What I
humanity
said about standing in front of an
because of
oncoming
these
train and
changes,
yelling,
and they're
"Stop,"
opening
like
it
that.
up and they're going.
So there was this
Human
news
beings
story
need to
about
have
this teacher who
face-to-face.
actually integrated ChatGPT
Human
into
beings
her
need
class.
coaching and
So what she did
mentoring,
was she got the
no
students
matter
to
where they are
actually
in their
go and ask
hierarchy
it
of
questions,
experiences, because
and
at
then they
every level
critique
they're
the
going to be doing
responses in
something that
class.
they've never done before.
That's
great. That's great.
And they
teaching.
need to have access to
So,
people who say, yeah,
as
I've done that,
opposed
or
to
let's
standing
figure
in
that
front of a
out
train
together.
and yelling,
They're going to
"Stop."
need
If you-
humans, need
if you can
humans,
figure
need
out
humans.
the direction that things
And,
are moving, and you can figure out how to
That's,
leverage
to me, the
flow,
formula for how
Yep.
any kind of
you're doing
organization
far better
can stay in
than trying
business.
to change it.
They've
Yeah,
got to
I agree.
further
I
open up
agree.
that discovery.
What
Now, last point though, and it's probably one that creates a dozen more conversations.
If you have
Just
a
as we're
burnout light
starting
bulb,
to
the
say
marketing
that we
people
really need
will
the
you
value of human
understand why
interaction
having
and
a
human
burnout light
thought,
bulb is a good
we have
thing.
chatbot
Okay.
coming along,
Oh,
which can mimic
aesthetic feel.
a human being,
It's shaped like a
at
light
least in the
bulb.
way they write, and even now in creative
and you'll
senses,
never have
I've
to
got
change
chatbots
it
that write
because it's
songs and everything.
burned out.
Now, this is the bad news and the good news. I think it's great news for those of us who say, okay, now we've got some real competition here.
Now in their
How do you get that humanity
with all
out
kinds
there
of made-up
more so
stories
someone
about
can
the
understand?
things
Oh,
that
that's
they already
Chatbox
had,
and
so
that's
I'd make
Dave.
up stories about
That's Chatbox and
obviously
that's
their
Leslie.
toys.
And
But I'd make
so
up a
Dave and
story
Leslie
about
need to
could make
be
up a story
more
about a
creative in
burned out
our
light
way of
bulb.
expressing things. But I
And,
think the bottom line is,
in a few
and I
minutes
hate
they'd
that
be
word,
entertained, and then
the gist of it
never
is
want to
that
turn a lamp on
Chatbox has
again
no
because
heart and soul.
I put it,
and
gave
we
it some
do.
scary human qualities.
That's it.
But that's
Yeah.
the fun of it.
So,
And,
what's your thought?
Why the hell not?
my
have some
thought
fun doing
is,
all
since
this?
I've done
doing
change
this
management, right?
out of the
People
goodness of your
stuff,
goodness,
and
really.
getting people
you may
engaged, and
have
getting
some
them
commercial
involved, and getting
opportunity
them on board and getting be honest, there's a downside, there's a positive, you're going to lose, you're going to win.
I don't expect
they've always tried to automate that.
In the way of conventional
and I've always thought, there's no way. And so all the excitement about AI
and I'm getting some now.
No,
after
it can't possibly be the answer. Or what I just said about the young woman that's supposed to spend 2 weeks with computer-based training.
The systems guy,
her soul died. She just couldn't sit there alone in a room. So,
characterize you as we're moving to at the end of our time.
I think it's all just to some extent been overplayed.
But
there's some wonderful pieces to technology, but it is not going to replace human beings.
Commercially successful
Look at kids, even with again computer-based training, even the Zoom experience. Some people did okay with it. Other people, again, my daughter's in education. She said they couldn't sit there, they couldn't do it, and that has that whole automated piece in there. So, but we keep trying to solve. We keep trying to solve everything with technology. I'm almost like, what are we trying to do? I don't get it.
I can relate
and
to
that might be my own limitation, but what are we really trying to do? I mean, nobody gets to work. Okay, then what?
Them understand
and
something
they talked about, the impact on lawyers and doctors.
At least.
Do I want to have an automated kind of
draws the two of us together
response to my situation? I'm not sure I want that. So I'm old-fashioned that way.
Well,
the power of
my cynical answer
is
why do they do it? It's because they think it'll save money. And it's such a fallacy.
Simply chapters in a single book.
Such a fallacy. I saw it when my wife was working in insurance.
The essence of
when
the
we first came back to Connecticut in the mid-'80s.
You take a clear insight, compress
so she was very effective, helping customers, doing all kinds of stuff. And then they decided they were going to bring in a software solution.
If you go back to
solution. They spent millions and millions, and they would interview her and others who doing the work. Say, well, what do you do? And then they try to plug that into this knowledge management system.
Yeah, that's a pretty.
It costs so much money
for the book.
It is
unbelievable for the time.
And
I'm sitting here teaching management. I'm seeing what she's living in. I'm thinking, this is going to crash. Yeah, it did. And
the best way
they swept out those offices. They sold a small insurance company to a much bigger company, which had even less soul. And I said, I don't want you to go to work with them. You had at least you could see the senior officers on the elevator. This one, who knows where I think they're in Holland. So that was the transition we saw. It was, and they were getting stock market approval because they were
proving your point because
reducing the workforce.
Feel very good.
And that sound familiar?
And not dumb.
They're saving money. They didn't. They spent $100 million to save
the traffic,
a few $100,000 a year
to catch up with your thinking.
People's
You're very smart.
Benefits. And
so I must add to that.
Wow,
kind fellow,
Leslie.
Well, thank you.
Let's keep trying to answer that question. And why do they do it, and what can be done about it? And
in future,
I think that
camera,
if anyone listens to us, they're going to at least be thinking now. There are.
Because there's so much I want to
Gen
learn.
Z people coming in the workforce. Now, there are middle-life people who are
conversation,
somewhat crunched in the middle management, and there are some senior people who are saying life's too short.
Is what matters.
And the people we want to be leading these companies need to say,
what to do.
This is a good place for my life to be leading this company or leading this division, and I'm going to really give it
sound advice,
a balanced approach. Now, I learned one thing: I've got to be home more, and I've got to be off my phone. But I'm still going to lead this company. Now, if we see those kinds of realizations
as a positive memory instead of
you may have some good things ahead.
So
no, I like that.
Very, very much.
It's interesting because it hasn't been solved. We've been talking, I think about checking the box. You've got the vision and the mission, and we value people, and all those posters that are put all over the place. Diversity, and I've had enough experience with all those situations, and somebody checked a box, but nobody's living it. And it's like really. And that's another thing. Gen Z does not like to have the wool pulled over. They're very pragmatic. you better do what you say you're going to do. So that's a whole nother conflict area, because so many companies don't. They check a box and they say we're good, we're wonderful, but they really aren't in a lot of human ways.
I keep saying, David, you got to make this short, but I have to tell you that what's been on my mind a lot. I'm joining some colleagues in the management education colleagues in a symposium in a few months, and they want to talk about JEDI, which is justice and equality and diversity and inclusion. And so they're very smart people, and they've got all these models and theories and stuff, and they want to shake them out. And they said, well, I'm studying practice. So I said, well, what? They said, what do you want to talk about, Dave? I said, I want to talk about practice. And here's what it comes down to. All of those wonderful, in quotes, floating thoughts go nowhere until a person puts any aspect of that in practice every day in their lives. So if you want justice to rule, then they've got to be touching points in their decision